Okay, we're now being streamed live. I am Margarita Estrada, member of the Omni-Pro Speakers Bureau. I am here with my colleague, Mario Lewis, and his daughter, Sydney Lewis, and we're going to talk about International Women's Day. I'd like to give you a little history about this special day.
That's awesome.
The first Women's Day was organized by Women's Socialist Party in Chicago on May the 3rd, 1908, where 1,500 women attended. After that, there was a meeting in New York City. And inspired by the women in the US, in August 1910, the first International Women's Conference was held in Copenhagen. More than 100 female delegates from 17 countries attended. But it's the Russian women who first celebrate International Women's Day on March the 8th. And of course, the war broke out and a lot of issues happened. But since then, the Chinese adopted it, the Spanish adopted it. In the US, it took hold a little bit later, but the simple reason that it has socialist underpinnings. And in order for the US to separate from that, they decided that they would call it Women's Day. But then in the 60s and 70s, with the women's revolution and so on, it took hold worldwide. Hence today, we celebrate International Women's Day on March the 8th. So Mario, what does this day mean to you?
I think Women's International Day is quite significant for me. And that's why I have Sydney here to talk a little bit about International Women's Day, because she's, I guess, part of my legacy. I have two daughters, so I guess I am fully vested in International Women's Day because it's part of my legacy, isn't it?
I mean, it is if you have two daughters.
It would be. And I've always had the privilege of having very strong women around me. So my mother's a very strong lady. She was a principal of a couple schools in the Bronx, New York. So she's a tough little lady. And I believe I've taken on many of her qualities. And my grandmother, who's from Jamaica, raised us all. And she's going to turn 101 on Saturday. So March 11th is her birthday. And you can't get more international than that. So I've been blessed and have embraced all the powerful, strong, beautiful Black women in my family and all the beautiful women around me. And Margarita, as a Toastmaster sister, I consider you a pretty powerful international woman from Puerto Rico. So it's because I am surrounded and blessed by so many, I think it's important that I celebrate them as well. And it shouldn't just be one day, but this is one special day to do it. When I asked you, what do you think about International Women's Day?
For me, International Women's Day is a day to recognize all powerful women, a time to recognize all of their achievements. It's where we should tell their stories.
Absolutely. And Sydney, I've seen you speak many times, and you delivered a talk about how you feel about banned books. And I think everybody that attended that talk really enjoyed it, because it's really an issue that is spreading across the US. So I see that the issue that you spoke about makes sense for International Women's Day, because a lot of the women's books are being considered to be banned, right?
From my research, that there is a correlation. There did seem to be a correlation. And
You gotta talk about it further.
like, if I'm being honest, I feel like most of these books do have important meaning. I mean, they often talk about issues that I feel aren't discussed a lot in society.
That's right.
Women face a lot of discrimination. So it's easy for society in general to try to put down their voice or suppress their voices. And that's why often a lot of women's books are banned, especially because they talk about women's issues and they may not be the mainstream, right? So what else do you think about banned books?
If I'm being honest, I feel like banning books isn't constitutional in general. In my opinion, free speech is something that we were founded upon. So why ban it?
Absolutely. And you know, the women's movement played a big role. regarding, free speech and women's suffrage, right? So we have to remember that all the women behind us, right, that struggled so that we could have the freedom to speak and also to continue along this route, right? To make sure that our voices are never stopped and that our voices are always heard.
People,
So-
I think people sometimes forget that part of the civil rights movement was also to create rights for women. So having that, because women, I mean, still today, you see that women are not paid the same as men. They face a lot more hurdles to make it in their careers. And this is in the US where you think they're a little bit more, they can be seen as more advanced. So
Yes.
but certain other societies where they're definitely held back, you can see that international women should be celebrated broadly because not definitely many places you don't have a level playing field when you're a woman.
It's all interesting because, we, of course, in February, we celebrated Valentine's Day, right? The day of love. And that's something that's supposed to happen every single day. But International Women's Day, in fact, I was talking to my mother today and I told my mother, Happy International Women's Day. She tells me, International Women's Day is every day. That's just for like a marketing tool. Of course, she's 95, right? She really doesn't know the history that much going back. But I understand her point, where women should be celebrated all the time, and she says, we women are special and we women are valuable to our society. Without us, there's no life, right? Yep. So that's how she looks at it. She's like, International Women's Day, that's every day, that's what she said. So it's a valid point. So the theme for this year's International Women's Day is embrace equity, and they do this, to embrace equity, to love ourselves.
Absolutely.
But right, so it's much deeper than that. So I'll give an example of equity versus equality, because
That's a big distinction: equity versus equality. I think Margarita's got a good story to help us understand the difference.
So first, I'd like Sydney to talk about equity and equality, and then I'll talk about equity. So Sydney, tell me, what does equality mean to you?
From what I've seen, equality is equal opportunities.
So it's when somebody has exactly the same as somebody else.
Yes, the exact same.
I mean, I think equality works in certain situations. It's helpful. Like if I had a piece of cake and you cut it in half, I want equal pieces, right? If Sydney likes cake.
Exactly. So I'm going to share about equity, right? So and I saw a video of a young woman who said, well, picture a mother who has 2 hungry children. And she has bananas for each one. The problem is, one of her children is allergic to bananas, right? So the bananas may quench the hunger, right? It may stop the hunger, but one of the kids will suffer because he's allergic to bananas. So that's like a simple way to explain equity. The ideal situation would be to have an apple to give to the one that's allergic to the bananas. Then it becomes equal because their hunger is satisfied, but each case is treated individually, right? So it's the same, for example, let's say you have a kid that comes from a rich neighborhood, and you have a kid that comes from a poor neighborhood, and they're both in college, right? But the kid that comes from a rich neighborhood, he's already had all the advantages, whereas the poor kid has had to struggle to get there, right? So it's equality, they're both there, but the equity is what's missing, right? So the whole point of this year's theme of, about equity is to look at each case differently to get people to the point where, where they're equal, right? So you have to have the equity before you get the equality. That's the idea.
That makes a lot of sense, because I think the solution to helping strengthen how we support women in our society will focus not on equality, because you can have equality now, but there's still the gender gap. exist. Equity will now build up the opportunities for women and give them a hand upwards, something that will allow them to make progress and make future generation of women progress at a speed that will give them equity, so that one day you can truly have equality. So I think that's a very profound way you expressed it, Margarita. And it's something that we really need to think about. Because one of the challenges I've seen is that in some parts of our society, people are still not even thinking about, they're not even at equality. They're not, and they're far away from equity. So I think there's still a lot more to go for us.
Yes, exactly. So example, you have 3 kids looking over a fence at a baseball game, right? Let's say the father and the 2 kids. The father can see the game clearly. The older son can stand on a stoop and see it, but the little kid is looking through a little hole, right? If they put 2 stoops over the little kid, then everybody will be equal. So that's another example, right, of equity.
That's a good one.
Right? Yeah, because when you're looking through the little hole, right?
Or you're not going to see the game well.
Then you're not gonna see the game. You're not
You're at
gonna
a
see the game.
disadvantage.
Yeah, well, but if they put 2 or 3 boxes where the kid can climb and he could see over the fence, then there's equity there, right?
Gotcha.
Because again, now all the needs of each one is being satisfied. So this year is going to be, it's a beautiful theme. I think that's something that, everyone should be thinking about going forward throughout this year until the following year. And that's why I wanted Sydney to join us on this, because we have 3 generations here, right? I'm a baby boomer, Mario's a Gen X, and Sydney, you're Gen Z.
Gen Z.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So we have
And I
3
think it's
generations.
good that she's here learning about equitable action. So equitable action will help us to really start on a trend of greater inclusion, a sense of belonging. I think we're already achieving a lot. We're starting to achieve diversities, understanding people's differences. Now we should move to greater inclusion and create a sense of belonging for all people. And I think that International Women's Day is foundational to helping us. So now let's focus on equitable action so we can have true equality going forward. That makes sense to you, Sydney?
It makes sense to me.
So you're gonna be part of the future, or so we can focus more on getting to equality. So, but now, but for today, we embrace equity, right?
Yes, exactly.
I hope that's something you can talk about when you go to school tomorrow, because I don't know if there's a lot of kids your age who fully understand that concept, the concept of equity. Is that something you think you can share with your classmates?
It's something I would like to share with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and this will be the beginning for you, Sydney, for this year, for your school year. It's something for you to think about, to discuss with your classmates, right? And with your teachers too. You might be able to even do a whole different presentation about equity, equity versus equality. So I think that, but for me, I know as a speaker, this is something that I'm going to be focusing on, but throughout this year, because I think that it's important. And I'm just so happy and grateful that you joined us today, Sydney, because it's important to have the voice of a young person, right? Of a young lady like yourself and many like you. You are the one that are going to be a leader one day. You may be a mayor, a president, an astronaut.
Or what? What else do you want to be?
A psychiatrist?
She wants to become a psychiatrist.
Oh my God, heaven knows this world needs it. So, so that's gonna be great, Sydney. We need it.
I'm curious, what you want to share with Miss Margarita, why you want to become a psychiatrist?
Yes.
I feel like mental health is understudied and undervalued compared to other areas of health. You can't have a healthy body if you don't have a healthy mind. Is my opinion.
Ooh, good one. Good one. That you can't have a healthy. Listen, you can't have a healthy body if you don't have a healthy mind, right?
Yeah.
Everything begins in the brain.
They go hand in hand. So I'm hoping that if she continues on her trajectory, she's a straight A student, gets into a great school, gets into a great college, and then she starts on her path to really changing the world and how they see mental health and helping underserved communities, because that's where we probably need the most help in just bringing resources, bringing equity to
Yes.
serve communities. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
And think about
Something I
the,
would want to do.
what was it, Cindy? I'm sorry.
That's something I would want to do.
Yeah, and think about, you know, as a psychologist or psychiatrist, with the contributions that you're going to make through mental health brings about even more equity, right? So I think that what you're going to bring is going to be so valuable, so valuable. So I would say that, you know, we ended right here. We say embrace equity.
Embrace equity.
See you all.
Thank you,
Have a
Margarita.
nice
Thank
night.
you, Margarita.
It was a great time talking with you.
Same here. Now, next week, Darlene Blanco and Isis Delvinovich will be speaking next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they will be speaking next week.
Right, they will be speaking next week, and, you know, they have their topic coming up, but the Omni-Pro Speakers Bureau is part of District 83 Toastmasters, and the conference is coming up in
Yes.
April. Make sure to go to tm83.org, look at all of these details regarding the district conference, make sure that you attend. There will be contests, there will be workshops.
International speech contest, which I know you're a participant, Margarita.
Yes, I am. I am a participant. I've won the area competition already, and I know you've won in yours. So, you know,
Hopefully you'll see us there at the district competition for the TM 83. So District 83 competition. So it'll be an exciting event. Please come on out and support our district as we
yes,
continue to get transition back into more in-person and active Toastmaster meetings.
yeah. Remember, go to tm83.org to register for the district conference. Write those dates down, and we're so excited about it, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you there. Bye now.
Bye now.
Embrace equity.
Embrace equity.
Embrace
Great
equity.
equity.
Bye now. Let me stop.